Hi, everyone. I'm Tara Reade. First, I want to thank Caleb Maupin and the Center for Political Innovation for having me come and speak, and also my fellow speakers, Jackson Hinkle, Samira Khan. You know who you are. You're amazing and fantastic, and I'm humbled to be on the same platform as you. And so, for all of you that are watching and listening, you're already questioning what's happening in our world right now. So let me tell you a little bit about myself briefly, if you don't know me, and then let's talk about what's going on. My name is Tara Reade. As I said, I was a former U.S. Senate staffer for Joseph Biden, and I was sexually assaulted by him. I came forward in 2019 with 7 other women about his behavior and sexual misconduct, and then in 2020, I came forward with my full history. After that, I was completely vilified and attacked by the corporate media. I was threatened with my life. I was threatened with prison twice. I've been called a traitor. I've been called every name you can imagine. I've been slut shamed and class shamed. And this was a lot done by the corporate Western media, including New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, Politico. If you Google my name, you'll see the hit pieces there, right there for you to find. Meanwhile, Google has those hit pieces up, but they took down my podcast, The Politics of Survival, that a lot of those podcasts focused on survivors that came forward about powerful people that were suppressed. So the irony is not lost. What I wanted to talk about today is obviously what is on everyone's mind, and I want to bring you forward to how I came to where I am. I was born in California. I grew up on a farm in Wisconsin. My mother was an anti-war activist. My brothers were quite a bit older than me and also, quite politically, active. My great-grandmother was a communist, and she's, kind of hung with the Jack Reade crowd. Jack Reade was a person who was very much into workers' rights back in the day. And I grew up with a different world vision. I grew up with a very, my parents had traveled all over the world. I had different views. My father tended to be more conservative, and he was kind of part of that military industrial complex. My mother was a political activist. So, I was used to political cognitive dissonance from a young age, so to speak. When I was a little girl, I brought to school Karl Marx's book, and I was telling all the kids, I was about 8 or 9, a different way to think, like maybe they didn't have to go to church, and maybe there was this view. And anyway, there was a meeting. The principal called my parents in. I was no longer allowed to bring my book of Karl Marx in or talk about it. They wanted to channel my leadership skills, is what they said. So they put an orange sash on me with a little badge to become a bus patrol. So I was like to inform on anyone that was misbehaving on the bus. So basically, they just tried to make me a fascist. So, it worked for a while because I liked the orange sash and the badge. Everyone loves a badge, right? When you're 8 or 9. Anyway, I'm telling that story because it's funny, but it's also kind of poignant because we have suffered so much suppression and so much misunderstanding with other cultures and other political ideologies. And it's ingrained in us from a young age, unless we have others around us to kind of, open the door and open our eyes to something different. So what I would say to you is right now we're hearing a lot of dire news. We're seeing censorship on a level I have never seen in my lifetime. I mean, as many of you know, I mentioned I was pretty vilified in 2020. I went to RT, who became an oasis for me of support because I knocked on their door I'm a writer and I wanted to, write some op-eds. They accepted them. I worked for them for about 1.5 years freelance. And then also they produced a podcast called The Politics of Survival, where I was able to raise the voices of sexual assault survivors and other cultural icons and different people that were doing creative work that had different points of view, not just through a Western lens. And unfortunately, as you know, that was taken down from Spotify and taken down from Google. And RT has been censored and has been, discontinued. And I have watched my colleagues get vilified on social media. I've watched their personal accounts be labeled state-run media. And it's been stunning to watch the hate and the vitriol and the bigotry. Now, I know some of these are troll farms paid for by you know who, the Biden administration, the Democratic National Committee, and those billionaires that want to form this message and want people to jump on this message and virtue signal yellow and blue and all of this, you know. But I'm here to tell you that how dangerous that is, and how a singular voice will simply manufacture consent and lead us to ruin, economic ruin, and possibly World War III, and possibly nuclear annihilation if we're not careful. As citizens, this is the moment in history we have to stand up. We have to stand up against censorship, speak out against it. And I will say clearly, because I'm being asked, and I was asked by a couple of journalists demanding that I denounce Putin or Russia. And I said, no, I will not. I stand with my Russian brothers and sisters. I understand from the point of history why they're engaged in this military conflict. I stand with RT. I stand with my colleagues from RT. And the reason I do is because it's the right thing to do. And the reason I do is because I actually do believe in freedom of the press. I actually do believe in freedom of speech. And I hope you do too. And it's hard and it's scary sometimes to stand up. As I mentioned to you, I have had death threats. I have been called a traitor. I've been threatened with prison. All because my ideas are not the same as is being fed to us. Force fed, actually, I would say, by corporate Western media. The reason I have my opinion about Ukraine is because I don't believe, like many of you here, that this started 14 days ago. It started 8 years ago. It started when 14,000 people were massacred. It started with the Maidan in 2014 when that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks revealed the war crimes that NATO and America took place in an American-backed coup of Ukraine, the Ukrainian government at that time, one of the masterminds being Victoria Nuland. Now they were trying to deny that there were biolabs, and they were trying to call it Russian disinformation or QAnon conspiracy or something. Then 2 days ago, Victoria Nuland actually testified that yes, there were biolabs. Of course, they're still trying to blame Russia. But what I want people to really look at, the nuance of this is because they're censoring our media so heavily, how will we ever know the truth? How will we ever know why and how much money was spent on these bioweapons and what their intent was? But it doesn't answer a question for me. It answers a question of why there was a sense of emergency for that military operation that Russia embarked upon. Do I want to see people dying? No. Do I want to see people bombed? Of course not. I'm anti-war. I'm anti-imperialist. That's how I've always been. I do not think that it's the answer to anything. However, we'll never know the answer to this question. By going in when they did they prevent a bigger massacre? Did they prevent a bigger disaster? We should be able to have this conversation. We should be able to ask these questions without being censored, without being banned, without being threatened with prison. It's ridiculous that we cannot have a conversation as citizens in our country that's supposed to be about democracy and freedom. That is why you're here today. This is the time to take action, because the reality is, and this is my opinion, that we are moving towards the East economically. The emerging markets are from China and from Russia and from the other countries. Our Western empire is falling. It's failing because it won't take care of its people. It won't educate people. It won't house people. You know, our system, the capitalist system, is destroying the fabric of our country. So that we've come to a point in history that instead of fighting Nazis and fascists, America is actually funding neo-Nazis and funding fascism and engaging in censorship of an unprecedented form. So I'm not here to try to change your mind. You all have your own. I'm here to say, listen to these different points of view, read critically, think about what your role is as a citizen and how we can push through the problems that we're having. Because the reality is the world is changing and the economic fabric is changing. If we engage in World War III against Russia, if we engage in that horrible reality, that horrible movement towards manufactured consent, it will be the ruin for generations. It might be the end of humanity itself. So we have to speak seriously about these issues and carefully. And we also need to push back on the censorship. Western corporate media, if we do enter into World War III, in my opinion, they are complicit with trying to fan hysteria and fan bigotry and hate towards Russia. So again, I will reemphasize, I stand with the working people, the working citizens that are suffering under the boot of the elites right now. I am with you. I am with them. I stand with RT, and I hope that they come back, and I hope that they can be a voice again and another lens that we can look through to see things. I stand with my colleagues that are being vilified and deplatformed and censored, like Oliver Stone, Igor Lopotnik, Caleb Maupin, Lee Camp, and others. I'm with you. My heart's with you. We need our voices to be heard. And I stand with the Russian people who are suffering right now because of Western bigotry and hate. I am standing with my cousins who are Russian. I'm standing with my friends who are receiving hate and vitriol every day just because of where they were born. And it's not right, and it's not fair, and it's not okay. I also feel sympathy for the people of Ukraine that are being victimized by a system, a military industrial complex that is destroying their lives as well. None of this is okay. And we must use this point in history to change it. So I encourage all of you to take action however you can to get your voices heard and to move forward. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for having me. Let's begin.